that community dinner tonight, April 16th.
Yeah.
Getting ready for Taurus season, baby. That's right. It's my favorite month of the year because it's my month. And I'm a narcissist. Yeah, so just to get that out of the way. So who's doing the spring cleanse still? Who's doing some version of the cleanse still? Someone, I am still a bit. James is. Laura's is. Maybe I was still doing the spring cleanse, any version? Okay. There's a few people that were interested in sort of starting. So the best time to cleanse, as I was taught, was right around the solstices and the equinoxes, the week before and a week after. You can get your cleanse in there because we're already in it's already a highly transformative period. So now we're in mid-April and we're heading for the next powerful period is around May 1st in the pagan tradition, which is Beltane, which is May 1st. So all the seasonal transitions are an important date. And then halfway between the seasonal transitions, like Halloween is Samhain. That's halfway between the September equinox and the winter solstice. So those dates in the pagan tradition have importance too. It's sort of like the surge, you know, the bell curve. Okay, so like right now the light is increasing rapidly and I have plants growing 2 to 3 inches a day. Which is the spring. So that's kind of what I brought this out. So this is gynostemma, and this is like 2 or 3 days of growth, literally. So, and see how it has these little tendrils here. I was showing it to Monica how these tendrils reach out, and then if it doesn't have anywhere to grab onto, then it makes a scaffolding for itself. And then it grows up on the scaffolding with the leaves here, and it mounds on itself. So this is one of the most underrated plants in the plant kingdom because it's easy to grow, and it has, I'm not joking, this is from a Japanese researcher, it has 3 times the concentration of adaptogens as Korean ginseng. 3 times the concentration per unit of volume that's in Korean ginseng. This is gynostemma. I've been saying the Latin name incorrectly. It's gynostemma pentaphyllum, meaning the 5, it's got the hand, see? In herbal medicine, when you see a plant with 5 hands, they say that this plant is here to serve humanity or to help you serve humanity. Cannabis, very similar, right? Oh, the marshmallow, the mallow family has the hand. Agrimony, which is in the rose family. The rose is the 5-petaled, right? The rose lines of the earth. You know about the rose lines of the earth?
Maple.
Right.
Maple, right, 5. Another plant that there's some plants back in the old European tradition. They talked about they help with psychic boundaries for all the empathic people that are being wiped out on the planet right now. So that St. John's wort was viewed as a plant to give you better psychic boundaries. And agrimony was another one, and wood betony. And there's another name of this one really special, but I can't remember it right now. So we can pass this around. If anybody wants to root and make their own gynostemma plant, you pull about 7 or 8 nodes. Each of these is a node. You pull off the bottom 3 or 4 nodes, put it in water, and it will root readily in about 2 to 3 weeks. What do you do with it? And then this is so you know how people sell wheatgrass shops? So what I've been doing for a number of years is building this plant up enough to sell green juice shots, because this is a complete protein. It's got 3 times the adaptogens of ginseng that wheatgrass doesn't have. It has the chlorophyll of wheatgrass, and it helps blood sugar, detox, circulation, almost all the 4 foundations this plant helps. So why would I grow it? I've been growing plants like this for 25 years, and now I've got it down to the science of if it's easy to grow and you're getting results, that's why I'm growing it.
I'm sorry, what is the name of it?
Gynostemma.
Oh, that's what I don't remember.
Gynostemma. Think gynecological stem plant. That's how I used to remember it. It's very feminine. It's very feminine. It's more like American ginseng than it is Korean ginseng. It's not heating on the system. I took Korean ginseng as a 30-year-old man, and guess what? It made me into a whacked, caffeinated fool because it was too yang. It was too hot for a young man's energy. A lot of people can't do ginseng because in the old Japanese and Chinese traditions, they would give you Romania and yin tonics for 3 to 6 months before ginseng, so you don't burn out your yin, right? So you don't get, and that's why caffeine is such a problem, because it's a diuretic and you're burning out all your yin. You're peeing out. It's by definition, all the caffeine products are diuretics. You're just peeing out all your minerals. So this is a plant that kind of offsets that. It's anabolic. It's building to the body. And you can try a little piece. Its common name in Japan is sweet tea vine, and it doesn't really like that, but
Yeah, it's calming,
But it also gives you energy. It's kind
It's
of
weird.
interesting like that. Yeah.
It's calm energy is what it is.
Is that
It's,
an adaptogen?
it has 3 times the adaptogens per unit of volume than Korean ginseng.
Wow.
That's from a Japanese researcher. And I have that cited in the Herbalpedia from Maureen Rogers is her name. This is calendula. We'll show and tell. This is a variant. And this, I was reading about this plant again. So it's one of these, like, it helps get waste transformed in the body and out. But this is the kind of spring energy. See, the plant's just starting to open. So that's spring energy. The action of just starting to gain, just starting to move upwards, just starting to move outer. And so that's the theme that I'm trying to teach is chemistry is a snapshot of a process that's already occurring. We've come to worship the end product without understanding the process that chemistry is pointing towards. And that's why I'm teaching, and that's why I'm up here. It's because we've been led astray. The Chinese and the Japanese way more have it. You're in the process of building your body up or tearing it down. You're in the process of heating up or cooling down. We live in a dualistic world, and we need to honor the dualities that we're in. Is our trajectory cooling? Is it heating? Is it going downwards? Is it going upwards? Are we going more inside? Are we going more outside? And chemistry is just, that's all it is, because vitamins are processes. Vitamins aren't chemicals. We were led down the rosy path of like, what? Vitamins are processes. Vitamin D is a hormonal process. And they've isolated down to this one chemical and brainwashed us to believe that's good for us to take one form of a vitamin that has 27 forms in nature. There's D1 through D27 isomers. And we're force-fed D3, which turns out blocks oxygen metabolism on the red blood cell. And we wonder why we have these COVID problems of hypoxia, because we're being nutritionally deficiently led to the COVID diagnosis. So that these plants are how we offset some of that. So we're in the process right now. Life is coming up. It's growing up out of the earth and it's growing down into the earth, right? The roots are growing down and the top's coming up. It's called sweet tea vine because it has some compounds similar to stevia in it, but it's a bitter sweet weirdness. And finally, lastly, this is young stinging nettles, but this is not the forest nettles. This is a field nettle. So there's, oh God, Latin name. This one's urine, urtica, meaning it causes urticaria. So its Latin name is urtica because it causes urticaria. This is nettles. So I've done some flogging on people. They don't like it, but generally you can cure joint problems by just flogging, and the sting will increase circulation.
Like bee sting therapy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So these young nettles, Urtica urens, the one you see in the forest is Urtica dios, I believe, more like dio, like divine, because they have a divine sort of aura around them. So why am I growing this? Well, these they like disturbed soil. So we moved, because of you guys, thank you. We moved the entire garden 2 feet down all the way over here, and all the soil got disturbed, and guess what's all over the garden? Nettles. I'm doing videos on my YouTube channel. I've done 2 now. One was when the garden was still barren a month ago, and I did one a few days ago, just literally 2 weeks later. And oh my God, the plants are, you can see if you watch the videos, you can go, wow, that grew that much in just 2 weeks. So that's what we're witnessing on this property is the medicine forest unfolding. If you want to, most of this thing is gone now because I put it in my fingers, but you're welcome to. Very nutritious and easy to grow. That's the theme.
Can you eat calendula straight, like on a salad or something?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. It looks like the edible flowers I've eaten before.
The Live Earth has them in their salad mixes, and Happy Boy, is it Happy Boy or Happy Girl? Happy Boy.
Happy boy, dirty girl.
Dirty Girl, there you go. Why Happy Boy and Dirty Girl and not Dirty Boy and Happy Girl,
You
You can eat this raw too, right?
Yeah, you can do that raw.
It's good.
Happy boy meets dirty girl
He's very happy.
So I'll say the calendula petals are much easier to eat than the rest of the flower.
Yeah.
But somebody just told me that if you, Teresa told me, if you steam the rest of the flower, it tastes like artichoke hearts. That's worth doing. Yeah. So yeah, eat the flower petals in your salad or separate. You can see they're easy to eat, but then let's try the rest of it. And
So
the leaves are actually edible.
it helps your cells get waste out because it's processing the lymph fluids. The calendula is. And now if you want to smell cardamom essential oil, I'm just going to pass that around. It's a little bit of an offset, but they say it uplifts, it's uplifting, it activates the mind. It's sharp in Ayurveda. Gives you sharpness. Okay, were we recording? We are recording, okay.
It's already not stinging.
So is anybody, I have a slight, I have one new topic to bring in, but then I wanted to mention, because Jean had a question on the nutrition group on Wednesday about how do you know if you cleansed well or not? You know, I don't know how well my cleanse went. You know, like so, there's a long view of how our cleanse went, and then there's a short view. So the long view is, say we've never cleansed before, and then let's do a little.
You have more energy.
Yes, that's a definite benefit. Can I get anybody want to write for me? Anybody want to be a writer? Like writing stuff down? Yeah, I need a helper today because I'm impaired. There you go. So more energy would definitely be it. But if you have less energy, I'm going to draw a little. So there's one layer, like, okay, there's a layer there of like central stuff. So you could write more energy. And then you might have a layer of like, oh, there's where I hurt myself and I had anesthesia improperly given. And then the scar tissue never healed properly. And then, oh yeah, then I got this traumatic head injury. And then they gave me all these chemicals for that. And I got another layer here. And then I, let's see, then my wife died and our home burned down. And I breathed in a lot of toxic ash from that. So there's another layer there.
Oh my gosh.
And so this is, I call it the layers of the onion, you know. And so when I started, I had about 1,000 layers because I had all these allergy shots. And so my first cleanse was like, any of the sponge is so dirty and you squeeze the water out. It was like, oh. So then the side effects, you know, like my first enema, I was in bed for 18 hours afterwards. My body was just trying to recuperate from all the drainage, all the cells going, yay, he's finally liberated all this toxic dump yard back into the lymph and out the body. And that's what I came up with Foundation for, which is your drainage pathways from the cell to the anus. And I have an article on my blog called From Cell to Anus Detox. It's quite entertaining. So you might cleanse this layer off here during a cleanse, and then the long view would be, oh crap, now this layer is coming up. And my body odor is worse. And my breath got worse. And my energy's better, so that's a good thing. But so like I had a year where my underarms smelled like sour sulfur. A few of you have heard this before, but you know, girlfriend wouldn't work out with me. And then I had an office manager that, poor thing, her underarms smelled like a volcano of ferric sulfide. It was like for like a year and a half. And she, you know, she's wondering like, is this ever going to go away, Craig? Because she, you know, she liked dating and, you know, and the men would be like, you kind of, you go shower? I just showered. Yeah, poor thing. So then it passes, you know, and then you get down to a few layers and that one layer goes off. And one story that when I was learning 20 years ago, I read the book by Augeneus, We Want to Live, by Augeneus. I mean, don't ask me to spell it. Augeneus of Vonderplanets. Try and spell that. Augeneus. And so if you go to the website's wewanttolive.com. And so he has a book called We Want to Live. And there's a lot to say about that. But the main story in this context is he had this, when he was doing heavy detox, and he championed the raw meat thing. He really brought in the raw meat. He was down in Beverly Hills in LA, and he was healing people with raw meat and raw vegetables with incurable conditions, 99% success rate. So he got the powers that be attention, and he's dead now, of course, but you know, they outed him. But you know, before that, he had this antibiotic 30 years ago, this penicillin thing, and he had this growth on his hand, and they could peel it off. You know, there's a scab, you peel it off and it comes back like a wart, you peel it off, it comes back, and this thing, it's not healing. So he had a biopsy, and it was penicillin from 30 years ago coming out of his body.
Wow.
We don't have any idea what we're talking about when we start talking about immunity. We know about this much when we say we know this much. We don't know shit. And my teachers, one of my teachers, he was one of those grand masters, old Japanese guy. And when he talked, everyone was just like, you know, when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. You know? So he's like, I'm going to sum up Western medicine in one word. I'm like, ooh, what's the master going to say? You know, one word: arrogance. Yeah. Summing up modern medicine, one word, arrogance. Right? That's it. That's allopathy is arrogant. And so what we're trying to do is come back to this more humble place of like, well, it seems, use language like it seems this way. Maybe it's that way. I had a client got the emotional sale with a concussion. They put him into the emergency care. They give him the emergency emotional sale. Oh my God, you're never going to be able to bike ride again. You're never going to be able to do this again. You shouldn't exercise for 6 months. And this is a Latin man who I've known for 20 years, and there's no holding this guy down. She's like, so guess what they gave him? They did not only an MRI, they also did a CAT scan, which is the equivalent of 50 x-rays of radiation with an open skull. So he was stable before that. And on top of that, they gave him an aspirin and a statin. After a concussion so bad that he couldn't eat and he had all the signs, you know, nausea. And so he came to me 5 days later and he's like, do I really need to be on this statin and this aspirin? They said that I'm going to get a blood clot and I'm going to get a stroke if I don't take this aspirin and this statin. And I'm like, there's other ways to accomplish that action besides a toxic medication. So I pulled up my Hippocrates.com and what are the side effects of that statin you're on, you know, the Lipitor? And all of his symptoms were from the freaking statin in only 5 days. And guess what the half, in pharmacology, there's a half-life, which is how long it takes to break down half of the drug. So guess what you want the half-life to be about 1 to 4 hours. So guess what the half-life of his statin is? 20 hours. Which means in a single 24-hour period, the drug's not broken down. It's halfway broken down in 20 hours. And then accumulating in the body and accumulating and accumulating and accumulating and accumulating. And you won't die of high cholesterol, you'll die of another cause.
And it CoQ10 as well, right?
It inhibits the entire cholesterol synthesis pathway. So guess what it's inhibiting? Anybody want to guess? CoQ10's one. It's a mitochondrial thing that you really need for energy. What else is it inhibiting? All your sex hormones and all of your stress hormones are made from cholesterol. Right. So that's made. What else is made of cholesterol in the body? Brain's made of cholesterol. We're up to like 3 major things. What else is made of cholesterol? Sure, well, yeah, give you that. Sure. That's 4 things now. What else is made of cholesterol? Cell wall, it's 5. Vitamin D is made of cholesterol as a backbone. Bile comes out of your liver, cholesterol as a backbone. So this one drug is interfering with every life-giving pathway in the body almost. And it's so evil, you guys. When they developed the first statin in the early 70s, the cholesterol standard was 300. Within 2 weeks of the first drug coming out, the standard was lowered to 200. If that's not disgusting, I don't know what is. And it's the top selling drug in the entire world. And it's worthless. It has 0 efficacy. 0. Well, now vaccines have taken over, of course, but let's not go there. So I kind of got off tangent there. Okay, back to the cleansing thing. Thank you. Back to the cleanse benefits. So I'll go back to that out of the more dense negative topic. So what else do you get, do you think? You might have this, you might have side effects in the long view from one cleanse, but what's another generally, this is generally what I hear.
I think you get inner calm.
Inner calm?
Happy poops.
Yeah, better BMs for sure.
More clarity.
Calm, clear and calm. BMs. Better poops, there we go. Better poops.
Better sleep.
Better sleep. Now, some people don't sleep as well for a period of time. And that form that some of you filled out where you bubble in all those 200 symptoms, one of the symptoms in the liver area is nightmare. So there's a high correlation of toxicity with bad dreams, turns out. So my own pathway was, I had 99% nightmares when I was young, and now I have 99% good dreams. But as I go back, like this last, I didn't cleanse from October cleanse until this, I was starting to have nightmares again this winter. And I realized I did some lab work, and my lab work confirmed it. My total cholesterol was 330, which is too high. And the LDL was 240 and the HDL was only 50. So that's HDL times 5, that's a high inflammatory ratio. You want your HDL times 2 to be your LDL. And that's a nice ratio. And LDL and HDL are actions in the body. So what's the LDL action? Because it's not cholesterol. It's a lipoprotein that carries cholesterol. So they gaslight us on that one too. LDL has nothing to do with cholesterol. It's a battleship that carries cholesterol as one of its supplies. That's right. The correct way to put it is the lipid panel. That's the correct way to put it. It's a lipid panel. So what's the LDL's action? It's a very simple analogy for LDL. It's a fire truck leaving the liver with supplies for the peripheral tissues. And that's why it's always higher than HDL. HDL is the returning fire truck from the scene of the crime or the accident. That's why it's always less. I'm overly simplifying a complex process, but it helps you understand, like, it's the action of going out and nourishing the cells, LDL, and it's not bad, right? They call LDL bad and HDL good. What a bunch of gaslighting horse shit. HDL is a byproduct of the returning cells, the returning lipoproteins coming back to the base to be reloaded and repaired. And so the higher that ratio is, the more collateral damage you've had out in the peripheral tissues with inflammation, the fires of inflammation, I call it. And I knew mine was off because there was stress, which raises the need for cholesterol, right? When you have a lot of stress, you need to make stress hormones. The backbone of stress hormones is cholesterol. If you have hormonal problems, then you might have a cholesterol problem because you got too much stress. It's literally that simple.
So the cortisol levels are affected by that as well, right?
Or they could affect it, but generally cortisol is a secondary byproduct of a frequency or an action.
Okay.
One of my dear friends actually just, he had, some of you know him, so I won't mention his name, but he just texted me today and he said he wondering about his high cholesterol and how to get it down, get his HDL up and his LDL down. And it wasn't horrible, and it's like a 3-to-1 ratio. And so that's what I told him. You got to work on what happened during your trauma, because you were in a terrible, terrible accident a few years ago. And I said, dude, you're running this cortisol stress pathway. You're in what they call a reflex arc, where you can't break out of it because there hasn't been an external influence to break you out of the emergency of the PTSD of what happened to you. So it keeps getting reignited, and so that's why his cholesterol is high. And so you got to find a way to calm the person down a little bit. And he's definitely thin Vata nervous type. So I would, my prescription for him would be just rest, maybe a little bit of exercise and rest. The one that's really interesting is what about vanity? What else do you get from a cleanse that's based in vanity? There's 2 there.
Better skin.
Clearer skin
Leaner body, maybe.
and weight loss, yes. Weight loss.
Leaner, maybe.
Now, here's a weird one. I started gaining weight when I ate less. Why would that happen?
Digestion's improved.
Digestion's improved, it's not as burdened, but there's another reason.
Metabolism is slowed down.
Metabolism slowed down, that's true. More efficient, that's definitely true. So these are all right answers. There's not any one factor. And I do need to put on weight. What you're seeing is the byproduct of a winter of lack. For me, I work out every day. Don't kid yourself, but I'm not like an animal like I was. So I went and surfed yesterday and today. And so that's what it takes for me, is I've got to have challenge to my body to gain weight. And so I could eat the same amount and gain weight as long as I'm exercising, physically intense exercise. So that's one of the main factors for me, is getting out, not listening to those stories of, oh, the water's so cold. That guy is the guy that needs, it's like, okay, you're all right, we'll be safe. It's the little guy over there scared in the corner, we'll be okay. It's just some evil surfers, that's all. The crowd was really mellow today. It was really nice. It was actually mostly women out. Hence it was a mellow crowd, All the aggro young men, I'm fucking here, fucking party. I grew up with it. Where's Will? Will knows, there's theme days, right? It's like, oh, that's kind of a mellow crowd today. But he and I have been surfing out there for 35, 40 years, and it's like a changing face that's never quite the same, is it? It's not, is it? All right. So weight loss. Would weight gain then be, if you're thin and you do a cleanse and you gain weight, wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah.
Because I got people that really want to gain weight, but they can't.
So it balances the whole system then, right?
Generally, if you can't gain weight and you can't lose weight, sometimes it's the same thing. It's just the biology down here is all messed up. And one clue for me was I broke C6, C7. You can see there's a raised area right there. And turns out that's the innervation to the thyroid. And I could never gain weight. And then I went and saw, I'll give Scott Sawyer huge kudos. I was working in his office building years ago, and he's like, "I'm gonna give you a free session." So he did one of his micro x-rays, and he's looking at everything. And I'm like, you say you can't gain weight, right? And yeah, he goes, well, and he had this cheesy chiropractor thing with all the light bulbs and all the innervations went to. So he was like, the funny bun was that operation, that game?
Yeah.
And he goes, and he lit up the thyroid. And I was like, are you telling me my broken neck is why I can't gain weight? And he goes, yeah. So he adjusted me 2 times a week for a year, and I gained 10 pounds. So I think what happened was he freed up the circulation from the vertebrae to the organ, and then it was able to function without being irritated all the time. So a lot of what we've got, like James talks about frequencies, but I've also worked in chiropractic offices for 20 years. And I'll tell you, a lot of what we have going on is we get misalignments. And the C1, C2 is the most important one, because everything below that, if you break C1, C2, everything below it goes to shit. If you break a vertebrae in here, at least you still got upper body function. But the further up you break something, the more you lose below it. That's why my C6, C7 was such, I mean, my poor mother, when she showed up in the hospital, you're a mother, just, I'm 21 years old, my whole life ahead of me, it just broke my neck. And so she was, just livid. And I'm going to take this back. I'm going to go away from that thought. So healthier weight. Anything else cleansing gives you?
I would say more smoother skin than cleaner skin. That's my-
Clean, smooth, well-hydrated skin. Well-hydrated skin.
I mean, I think there's a host of metaphysical, emotional, mind type things that you guys are positive.
Clearer would be a good summary, right?
Emotional, more emotional
Balance.
balance.
So that image that you drew there with the layers like of the onion, it's like psychotherapy when they're actually going through, especially PTSD kind of situations, and you're actually going layer by layer and finding and releasing the trauma, right? But then once you release one layer, then another one comes up. And
Yeah.
so cleansing would also help with that process too, right?
So there's a word, I actually have a video of what I call the 5 higher markers of health. And this is a classic one. So the word is emotional fluidity. You don't get stuck on something. You're always in the moment. My last conversation with Adyashanti was about this. And it was about, if you get stuck on something, then that's the work. And Kelly Deary and I, prior to that conversation, I said, there's this Taoist quote that led to this conversation with Adyashanti. And the Taoist quote is, enlightened action leaves no trace. So Kelly's take on it was, it's about karma in the world. Adyashanti, I said, I don't think it's about that at all. I think recycling thoughts and regret and doubt are the trace of unenlightened action. That's sin in the old Aramaic. I've sinned, I've missed the mark. It's an unenlightened action. Now I have doubt and regret and repeating thoughts. The repeating thoughts are the fact that awareness is chewing on it. And it's not fluid because you're stuck. Or I can't forgive somebody. That's not emotional maturity. I'm sorry. It's not on the highest levels. You can keep your grudge. The only person that's hurting is you. I got my grudges still, and I realized it's just hurting me. Forgiveness is an act for self. It's an act for self, because by not forgiving and holding the grudge, we're only hurting ourselves. You see, so cleansing helps with that fluid process. We get more grace in our life because we polished the mirror of awareness enough that it can break through a little bit. The next pointer, I just pumped it again. I love when Adya pops in. He says, awareness is like a hunter seeking a moment of vulnerability. Awareness is like a hunter seeking a moment of vulnerability. So by outing ourselves, like we had men's group last night, it's like, I said some things that, sometimes I know I'm speaking from my heart. I've mentioned it before because I can't believe I just said that. It wasn't rehearsed up here. It just came out.
In the moment.
Yeah, you're speaking from your heart when you don't know what you're going to say.
Right.
It's just, here it is. Here I am. That's what I'm doing up here. I'm trying not to rehearse. Ajashanti, he says he's never once rehearsed for a talk ever. Not even once. He said he can't. And so I'm best when I'm ad-libbing. I had Mike Buffo, some of you know Mike Buffo with Kelly, the film guy. He tried to get me scripted and rehearsed and all that, and it was just a dismal failure. And I go, look, give me a little 3x5 card, a couple of cue points, and let me just go. We did a 5-minute video, and it didn't even require editing. He was like, wow, you just let me go. Give me a theme and I'll go. I did want to cover the next, let's see, cleansing benefits. Oh yeah, okay. Health is what? You want to give a shot. What is health? This was my first lecture 25 years ago. This is what we started with. What is health? Health is wealth? What is health? There's no wrong answer.
Feeling good in your body.
Good?
Your,
Wait. Emma's got a response.
your body functioning at its highest capacity.
Great. There's no wrong answers. Perfect. You had one?
Oh, a lack of dis-ease.
A lack of, okay, more ease.
Health is happiness.
Happiness? What's the Webster's Dictionary definition of health?
Free of disease.
Absence of symptoms.
Yuck!
The absence of symptoms.
It's like a hospital.
What's the avoid?
Homeostasis.
Much better.
Yeah.
Fluidity.
Oh, yeah.
Flow. Fluidity. Yeah. Homeostasis. We all get it.
Stasis. Yep.
So energy. So I'm going to lead you to the, I always hate those multiple choice tests where there's like 3 right answers, but there's the most right answer. God, I hated that. You never even got partial credit, for the partially right answers. Like, can I get a 3rd credit? I got part of it right, So go back to the Latin word. What's the Latin root of the word health?
Salud, no? No, that's must be French.
Well, heal, right? Health, heal, healing. What's heal? What's the Latin root of heal? Whole. Whole. What word in the East is that related to?
Bowling.
Right? But there's a word like in India. We do it in America now. Yoga. Yoga and whole mean the same thing.
Oh, really?
Oh.
So we turned the word yoga, they turned the word yoga in the West, we turned it into health, healing, but all yoga means is you're in the present moment. Body, mind, spirit is here, right here, not 10 miles from here, not 5 years backwards, you're here.
So momentary fluidity.
So
Wholeness.
awareness that's moving through us is already fluid. We're the ones that get stuck. We're the ones that unenlighten ourselves with our behaviors by getting stuck in the eddy when life has already moved on, right? The present moment might have moved on, but we're still stuck in like, God damn, I wish I wouldn't have said that, right? And then we're stuck in this eddy. That's why in acupuncture, right? One of my teachers says, you get that pain on a point and then it goes away because there was a little eddy of stagnant energy right there and you hit it and it frees it up. I like that metaphor because it makes people feel a little less disease, like, it's just a little pain, you see how it just went away. Like large intestine with that large intestine 10 right there. Oh, that's a good one. We know how to push people's buttons, like gallbladder 31, just. So if you guys ever need, if ladies, you're ever in a bad, there's a martial arts point halfway up the thigh on the side. If you just kick this point, you can disable somebody. It's known in karate. Right here also, this whole, if you can punch here and kick here, you can run and get away because this will knock the leg out. Completely knocks the leg out on the side halfway up.
Gallbladder fight?
Gallbladder 31, if you want to look it up on Google Images, GB 31. I have a little martial arts book, and that's 2 of the points. Like it's like Mr. Spock points, if you really want to mess with somebody. You can run away. Little side note, clinical pearl there. So one of my mottos in the business now is healing, healthy, whole. And you know that you've made progress with your cleanse if you're just more present. You're not off in the future thinking about what might happen. You're not back in the past with regrets and doubts. You're not stewing on that conversation as long. Maybe you get 10% more present. That's great. If you're 10% more present, that's a win. Because then you're not operating from trigger and instinct, right? And patterns of conditioning, which I call root level programming. So the other thing about health is that it has to be experienced. If you conceptualize health as what they're doing, then you're never going to get it. So one of my business slogans is, we're here to give you an experience that you can't deny. As I had thousands of mind-cracking experiences of, I can't explain what just happened. And therefore, I know there's a higher power that's behind this because it's unexplainable, and it turned out wonderfully. So health and yoga mean the same thing, it turns out. Okay, then one more quickie. What's a vitamin? Vitamins are, good answer, a process. What else is a vitamin? So what is vitamin, the old Latin word for it?
Needs to be alive.
Vita, vita, alive, yeah, vital, vita, alive.
Mineral?
Amine,
All right, I like it,
vitamins is a short notation of the vital amines. Back in 100 years ago, that's what they called vitamins when they were discovering these things. Bye. Vital amines. They thought they were proteins, but they didn't quite have it yet. And then they started measuring a little more. And then we were talking about Harvey Wiley earlier. So from about 1900 to about 1920, there was a lot of bad stuff going on. A lot of bad shit going down. So what happened was, if they couldn't develop the vitamin from cheap chemicals, it was never labeled a vitamin. So they went through all the B's, and that's why you have B12. Well, there's B1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And like B4, you never hear about it, right? But it's the fat soluble protector of thiamine, B1. And they couldn't make it in a lab, so they deemed it a non-vitamin. Vitamin C, they were able to, they noticed that vitamins, ascorbic acid and sugar were one molecule removed. So they could make really cheap sugarcane corn syrup, add an enzyme to it, and make ascorbic acid very cheaply from GMO sugar. What we're getting, most of our ascorbic acid now is from GMO corn syrup that's made over in China. And ascorbic acid was never proven to cure scurvy, not ever. That's all a lie. Linus Pauling's work was a little bit bullshit, because his predecessor has the quote that won the Nobel Prize: I could never cure scurvy with ascorbic acid. Ascorbic acid, 500 milligrams or more. I have the NIH study and I passed it around that one class. 500 milligrams or more of ascorbic acid per day damages your DNA and causes atherosclerosis. It's an NIH study. You hear people injecting it with cancer. I'll come like IV ascorbic acid therapy. They go, my vitamin C injections, and I correct them very quickly. That's not a vitamin C injection, because vitamin C is the sunlight process of nature turning sunlight into this life-giving vitamin. Because when you pick that plant, vitamin C drops 90% in 24 hours. It's a process of turning light into sugar and then vitamin C and other compounds. So the C complex has a lot of chemistry associated with it. There's copper associated with it. There's an enzyme called tyrosinase that's related to tyrosine, which is the T and T4, T3 thyroid hormone. So in a way, whole food vitamin C helps your thyroid. The F, we aren't taught this stuff. Official nutrition, they don't even touch this stuff. I had to look around for 20 years to find this stuff. It's buried, it's there, but it's buried under layers, layers of stuff. It takes some serious digging. There's copper, and what's copper affiliated with? Red blood cell metabolism, but not in a way we think. Copper, the copper proteins that have to do with metabolism, where we're getting ATP on the red blood cell, they're very delicate and they're upset by D3, ascorbic acid, and zinc. The top COVID recommendations. That's how I knew this whole thing was a gaslight. So if you give zinc, great, give copper with it. If you're going to give vitamin C, give whole food vitamin C, great. If you're going to give D3, go to the fucking sunlight, for God's sakes. Right? Go in the sun. You know, and take a little D3 for a couple of months, maybe, you know, but you don't take a synthetic for more than a few months in my world because there's side effects. Like that statin my buddy was on for his blood clot. I mean, just, you know, so we gave him fish oil and some herbs and a few supplements, and he was happy as a clam. You know, like, hey, there's your blood thinning thing. There's your brain circulation. You know, this is way easy to fix. Yes, question.
Are there any reasons why someone might have extremely low vitamin D besides not being in the sun?
Yes, good question. So the form of vitamin D they're measuring and saying is low is the storage form. It has nothing to do with the active form in your body. So it's not low. If it's below 20, then there's some correlations with maybe taking a little D3, but it's made from cholesterol. So that's the pointer pathway. Your cholesterol metabolic pathways are off.
Okay.
That's the truer statement than take D3 the rest of your life.
Yeah, my friend got prescribed huge amounts.
Yeah, 10,000, 20,000 IUs, which takes nutrients out of the peripheral tissues and puts it back in the blood. So large doses of D actually malnourishes the peripheral tissues of the body.
But then you have to come with K though to put
No, you
that
need
in
F,
and K, right?
vitamin A, D, F, E, and K are all in a spectrum. All the fat soluble vitamins are all in a spectrum of sorts. So vitamin A is the fat soluble version of vitamin C. That is your oxygen building vitamin, believe it or not. Iron is incredibly toxic and has to be managed. Like our body really recycles iron well because it doesn't want a whole lot coming in. So we better move on past that slight digression. So vitamins it's a process, but you have to kind of name the individual process. So vitamin A is a fat soluble process of turning sunlight into this vitamin that nourishes the parts of your body that need light, which is your blood. We're light beings. And vitamin B, the B vitamins, as a general thing, they're here to help turn our food into new resources and energy. They're co-catalysts. So the vitamin B process is a process of turning food into energy. That's the vitamin B process, you know, to overly simplify it. Vitamin C, sunlight. Right? Vitamin D, sunlight, but it's a sunlight filter. Morley Robbins of the Root Cause Protocol, who's the main guy that got me into this whole iron toxic supplement thing, calls the vitamin D the sunlight filter, which I think is interesting. So our ancestors knew about vitamin F, and so they would give cod liver oil instead of D3 because they had vitamin A, D, F, and the right amount of K. You never want synthetic K because it's in all green leafies and all grass-fed animal food. There's a fat-soluble version and a water-soluble version of K also. We're not taught that, K1 and K2. We're not taught that. It's not convenient to learn that stuff.
That cod liver supplement that standard process has those vitamins.
Right, yes. Standard process is they're processing their fish oils with enzymes, so they're still raw. You don't want molecularly distilled anything. It's a fancy way of staying highly refined. And these long chain fats that fish oils are 25 to 30 units long. Butter fat's like 6 units long. So which stick's going to break easier, the long one or the short one? The long stick breaks easy, right? So it's oxidized easy. And that's why you have to be careful with these fats. Michael McAvoy, when I met him 15, 20 years ago, he was against all fish oils across the board. They increase free radical production, especially if they're not processed properly. Terrible, terrible free radical production with these things, especially if you get the wrong ones. People think they're helping their vascular system, taking their ascorbic acid and taking their fish oils, and they're actually damaging everything. What is damaged flax oil, folks? What's rancid flax oil? We've talked about it's in the hardware store.
Linseed oil.
Linseed oil, which is a varnish. So flax oil is very similar to fish oil. So when it goes rancid, it turns into this plastic polymer called a varnish. So stale fish oils are like polymers of plastic that your body doesn't want to process. So it causes inflammation. That's a little dirty secret you don't know about, you don't hear about with fish oils.
It's really sad since we have that main company here in Santa Cruz in Watsonville.
Yeah, Nordic sucks.
Nordic Naturals, I mean, they're here. We could do something more about them.
I've talked to their rep years ago.
But if enough of us do it, that
could make a
Just keep
difference.
hammering them. I'm into it.
I mean, I don't know about
You know
everyone
me,
else,
I'm a
but I
hammer.
had a
And
lot
you
of
keep-
their stuff was not like that. It was hurting me, not helping me.
Okay.
Do you have a fish oil that you recommend or?
All the products I carry, I have vetted. So these are my standards. This is from Conversations with God, book 3. My companies have to be family owned and they have to be transparent. That's what I'm looking for, is an honest, transparent, family owned company. So I have standard process and systemic formulas and premier research labs and YSB farms. I dropped Garden of Life because they're not family owned anymore. No, they're total corporate bullshit. Josh Axe and Jordan sold out, you know. And I'm naming him because they sold out, you know. He's retired, he made all his money, you know, he's off tired of his beef farm now. Great for you. I hope he's still helping people because he did start it out really well. He did a great job, Jordan. I mean, his book changed my life. So I'm gonna move out of that. And so vitamins are always associated with mineral complexes. That's the other part that people don't really get. You don't see iodine just floating around the bloodstream. And if you do, you've got a problem. You don't see magnesium just floating around the bloodstream. They're bound to something called a ligand, L-A-G-A-N-D. They're bound to a ligand. So vitamins are usually bound to minerals and minerals are usually bound to vitamins. It's like somebody asked about calcium metabolism. Well, guess what? Calcium is in every single metabolic process in the body almost. Same thing with magnesium. And I'm going to end there and go to the last topic of the evening. I wish James was here, but I'll show him this. So has anybody heard of Orgonite? Seen the Orgonite crystals? All right, I don't have any out here. Oh, is somebody selling them? She's selling them? Oh, awesome. So Orgonite comes out of Wilhelm Reich's work. If you don't know Reich's work, he was talking about orgone energy, which came out of, he was studying orgasm, orgone energy. And he would make these orgone chambers. Oh, thank you, perfect. There's some Orgonite. These are the originals from, guess where I made these? With Bruce and Cynthia Tanner.
Oh, cool.
At their it was the second Orgonite workshop, I went with them. So I made these with Bruce and Cynthia Tanner and I started making Orgonite because of Bruce and Cynthia. So thank you, Bruce and Cynthia Tanner. And they had their cloud buster, which was like 8 feet tall and 5-gallon bucket and copper. And this thing's, I mean, the whole sky above it's clear for a mile in diameter around it. It's crazy. So orgone energy is based also on the piezo electric effect. And that was, if you remember, you take a crystal, you have a wire taped to one end of a crystal, on the other end of the crystal, then it goes to a light bulb. And then you get a hammer and you hammer the quartz crystal and it lights up the light bulb every time you hit the quartz crystal. What the hell is that? It's called the piezo electric effect. You don't learn this in science class anymore?
Yeah.
It's so cool in high school to be like, oh, look at this. The lights going ding, 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 ding. Ding, 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 you know, as a young man, oh, this is so fun. Ding, 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 ding. You have like 5 crystals. Ding, 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 a little, you know, get a little thing going on, a little music. So the theory goes, when you squeeze the crystal, which is what the Orgonite's doing, it sets off a little torus field around it of energy, electromagnetic field. And so what Reich was doing is he would put people in these orgone chambers and he was curing cancer back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, 30s and 40s. And then because he was from Germany, it was when the Pinko Kami thing was going around. Because he was doing so well, healing people, he was labeled a Pinko Kami and thrown in prison where he died suspiciously. All the good ones are always wiped out, right?
Wow, that sounds nothing like today.
But we get to get.
Nah, they don't do that at all. And they cover it up real quick, you know. So Reich, you know, there's a lot of people that took this and ran with it though. And so the orgone energy and then Orgonite blossomed out of this. But orgone chambers aren't that hard to build. It's basically like layers of wool and wood and steel, and you do it just right, you make the chamber just right, you can put somebody in there and hotbox them for a while and they might cure their cancer. So Orgonite then has this field around it. And so I was reading about bones are like Orgonite. This is from The Biology of Kundalini, Jana Dixon. Again, and I was doing a quick control F for a client on the document because the biology of Kundalini, folks, is the best attempt I've ever seen at documenting how awakening looks in the physiology of the human. It's a brilliant attempt. It's not for the average layperson, but there is, there's needles in the haystack with it. So she was referring to the bones having this piezo electric effect, and she cited this Taoist bone breathing exercise where you inhale and you pinch all the muscles around your bones as hard as you can. And it's an old Taoist exercise, and they said that that pressure on the bone causes the bone to put out that piezo electric effect. And I'm fascinated enough that I'm introducing it tonight. That here's the bone. Of course, there's my torus field, and there's the pressure going on the bone. So I have a broken neck, multiple broken bones, multiple traumatic head injuries, and the Taoist saying, the Chinese saying about bone follows muscle, muscle follows bone. So you have to use you've got to get that pressure on the bones to get that piezo electric effect to increase circulation, help the bones heal. You're not going to heal sitting in bed. Generally, not as fast. And so that was the first thing I did. 3.5 months out of a broken neck, 2 weeks out of a halo brace. My family's like, you're not surfing. I'm like, fuck off. If I die, it's on me. So 2 weeks out of a broken neck, right down to Moss Landing, surfing 6-foot waves, right back into it. Told to never surf again by my doctor. No. Will understands. Imagine being told you're never going to surf again at 21. No. And there are guys with one arm out there surfing, There's a guy down in Malibu, I think he only paddles with one arm, It's like, didn't keep him out of the water, he gets up with one arm, like, fuck, that's amazing.
I just have to ask, so the squeezing effect, like, totally makes me think of people pushing really hard if they're constipated. It could be good for you.
And that's a fascinating tangent that I hadn't expected. From bones to bowel movements.
You're not supposed to
Oh,
have to
everybody
push
does
to
it
build
whatever
a
way they
bowel
can.
You're not supposed to have to push, right?
I know you're not supposed to have to, but if you are pushing and it helps your bones, that would be amazing.
What bones are-
I've had a bad habit of pushing my whole life. I've tried to get out of it, but it's like, it's such a bad habit.
You just
It's
wanna
in
go
being in a
fast.
hurry. Okay, I got to move this thing along, let's get going here.
Women have always said, elder women have always said, never push your pee out. You're just wrecking your bladder. But, like we get in a hurry.
Look,
Yeah, that's
Cindy had the
what
good
hurts.
poker face on that one.
I don't know, but I have to say, I like, there turns out to be some little good thing about something that we thought was bad.
I'd love to
Basically, we're
reframe
self-healing
that. Boy, I
miracles.
would. Well, here's a weird therapy that I found out through standard process doctors that's related to this. So
Okay.
people that have like really bad bowel problems, they just have a hard time going.
Uh-huh.
So one of the ways this one doctor got this kid going, she was like 14, 15, was he had realized he had to get creative because nothing was working, even the product called Colax, which generally works. So he had her taking the Colax and the magnesium as she was going to the toilet in the morning and then before bed. And every time she was on the toilet, he would give her she would take the laxative. And the somatic of the association of I'm taking my laxative, I'm on the toilet, then it would bring about the next bowel movement faster. And so the product Colax from MediHerb, she would just give her that and some magnesium. And I always thought that was so creative. Yeah, isn't that creative?
Holding your breath will also help.
Holding your breath, folks.
Because building up your CO2 relaxes smooth muscle tissue, which is all the muscle tissue that you don't have control over. If your CO2 levels are too low, your smooth muscle tissue stays tense and you can't release. So doing breath holds and just allow it to relax and go.
And does it help as much or differently if you hold at the top of the breath versus the bottom of the breath? I'm still not clear about that.
Well, you're gonna build up your CO2 level faster if you hold it on an exhale.
Right, okay.
But
The
it
comfortable
depends
breath
if
thing,
it's
right?
up.
Hold it out.
Yes.
Yeah.
It'll just take you longer to run out of.
Takes you
oxygen.
longer.
Yeah.
It's just more efficient, faster to do it on the exhalation.
Well, so there is a relationship. Remember, the bowels and the lung have a relationship in Chinese medicine. So what do the bowels and the lung have in common? Why would they be put together for thousands of years in Chinese medicine? There's an action they share. Releasing is one. What's the other action they share?
Contracting, expanding,
Expanding and contracting. It's taking in and letting go. So what is the bowel taking in? Via the portal veins.
The same thing is true if you have diarrhea too. Like I had a bout of something in Hawaii when I was there, and I was like at a store and didn't have a toilet, so I just held my breath and it stopped the contraction directions. I had diarrhea, so it balances you in either direction.
It's good. See, these are the little tips that you look for in the moment-to-moment stuff that you have to pay anybody for it. You don't need anybody's advice. You don't need an expert. You don't need a drug. You don't need a pill. Just the grace of remembering is all we got. Oh, I forgot to do it. Well, do better next time, right? Because we're not going to remember every time. We get lost in the triggers and whatnot. So I wanted to introduce this bone piezo electric effect because I think that the bones don't get enough credit for the life force they're generating, and the aura that we have is partially because our bones are putting off a torus field, especially the more we exercise. I have one story just popped in. I've never been a heavy guy. Probably the most I've ever weighed is 183. I think was like I was most happy. 6'2", 183. I was like, I like this weight. Generally, I'm around 170. But when I surf a lot, there's a word called enchantment in old Celtic lore, and this relates to the piezo electric effect. I had this guy, he was like my friend, he kept going, "You're so buff. You look like a weightlifter." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And so he was enchanted because he had the illusion that I was bigger than I was because of this torus field thing, I believe. I had numerous people in my youth, the more I was surfing, I'd give off this aura of like being 20 pounds heavier than I actually was. And it worked to my advantage because then if the bullies are around, like, puff up, yeah. Especially in the pecking order at the surf area, you got to puff up every now and then and show your peacock feathers. And I ain't gonna get any waves. He's over there shaking his head. He so knows. You gotta play the poker face. Get it, buddy. Like pirates, yeah. It's like surfers are the last of the pirates. That's what they are. All right, get off my way. I'll make you walk the plank over the rocks.
Your surfboard will become a plank.
That's right. That's right. Guidelines. So there's different ways to measure your CO2 that Cindy talks about, and it's on every single basic blood work is your blood bicarbonate, your blood CO2 levels.
Yeah, right.
So if you see that low, you want the range between 24 and 28. That's where you want it. So if it's too low, like you don't got to know.
4 and 28, what?
It's like it's the common standard. I forgot what the suffix is, but it's 24, 28 on the lab work. And this is blood work though. So I know one's metabolic acidosis and one's metabolic alkalosis. So that's kind of how we view it in my world. But it'd be interesting to translate that to, like the holding the comfortable breath, how long can you hold your breath kind of thing, and then translating and seeing if they line up. Okay, my blood work shows CO2 too low. I can only hold my breath for maybe 5 seconds, I mean,
5
seconds. That's what I was trying to get to. I'm glad I kept going. So Cindy, I have a question for you. I was telling Monica about the anal sphincter clench. A lot of us aren't aware of. I think a lot of us are holding down here. They're holding down in this pelvic area and don't even realize it. And through my meditations over the years, I kept noticing like, God, I'm holding my anal sphincter for no reason.
You're tight ass.
Ah! Have you seen a lot of this? I mean, in your therapy, do you run across this with people where they're holding down there? Is it common at all?
Like permanent cable?
Well, like constipation. I was thinking it relates to constipation. Maybe they're just holding down there.
Biofeedback, they say the forehead and your butt are the 2 biggest places that we hold unconsciously. Yeah, like this.
Really?
Yeah, I went this whole thing.
I knew it. See,
I'm not
yeah.
going to tell what I was holding, but I'm just going to say that.
Well, there was a polarity therapy. What was his name? Randolph Stone has a whole thing in polarity therapy where he'd put on a glove and he would go up into your anus and he would press up into your lower coccyx. He would literally press up into and release a lot of stored tension.
Yeah, wow.
Now that I only did it once with me and a friend tried it, this female friend, and we got a Kundalini eruption. We both had to stop. We never did it again. Yeah, we only got to one spot each. Is that first lower coccyx? We went in and we both went, like, what was that?
I think you're really careful too. You can break somebody's coccyx really easily if you're pointing the backwards way and you're pushing it.
Yeah, it's very tender.
So did this make you glow?
Well, we both had been playing around being sexual, but we never got sexual. And then suddenly we both wanted to be sexual, and we're like, maybe we better. So we parted very quickly, and you didn't see each other for a week, and it was like side effects for a week. They're like, oh, I had a headache, and oh my God. But I was able to trace mine. I had symptoms go all the way up, and then I had these headaches, and because I was doing, I mean, you guys are in the unusual conversation. So I was doing some form of semen retention for 25 years because I wanted to be a better lover. And then what that does though is you build up your chi, and then it wants to rise. And this what's the name of that book? The Healing Power of Illness. Detlefsen is his last name. Something Thor, something Detlefsen. The Healing Power of Illness. Just love this guy's book. I mean, it's a rare one. It cost me $80, softback. And I looked up headaches, to see and he's a German Jungian psychologist, so it's everything's put into it is this way, no seams. Because you're German. I gotta pick on you a little bit. There's no other Germans in the room, is there? No, Carl is here. I could have fun with Carl. No, Carl, yeah. Oh, Isabel's not here either on the call. She's fun to play with. So yeah, okay, I'm gonna move on now. Any other questions while we're on film here, especially because we just finished the cleanse. One of the things I did notice, I was telling Monica, I think that the main problem I have is I end up giving too much. Then I'm playing catch up with eating at the end of the day, and I'm eating too late, and then I'm up too late. And then no matter what else I do, I've noticed like if I can just put myself first or a higher priority over others, then my morning is that much better and my day is that much better. I'm not playing catch up. And I also found out that the Pink Floyd song is correct. I am and have been navigating in comfortably numb states for a long time. And I reintroduced caffeine a little tiny bit, a gram in the last couple of days, and noticed I'm not feeling as much as I was. And that's one of the pleasant and unpleasant side effects of cleansing is fasting does it too. You get more open psychically and feeling more of what's going on in ourselves and others. And I believe a lot of us, one of my teachers calls it the poison path. We use poisons very carefully to regulate how much we want to feel.
THC makes sense.
THC, whatever, sugar, caffeine, cigarettes, alcohol, scary movies. There's all of these different ways we dumb ourselves down. Overeating, oversleeping, not sleeping, overworking. We've all got it. We all do some degree of poison. I mean, it's like what defines us. I'm happy with my poisons pretty much now. I like to keep feeling more, but the main thing is that we're honest with ourselves, and that we're not perfect. We might never be perfect, and that's okay. Yeah.
Can I move in with you?
Yeah. When my perfectionist died, my life got a lot better.
Yes.
And we spoke about the judge last night in men's group, the inner judge. And a lot of us set too high of goals. Why? To sabotage ourselves so we can beat ourselves up.
Because that's what
I've done it my whole life. Set high standards and then not meet them, and then then the judge is like, he gets like all this material. See what a fucking idiot you are? It shows it right there.
because that's what feels familiar.
Right. And a lot of us a lot of the males had fathers that were either not available or completely denigrating. And that sets that up in the man to give it back to the next generation. We talk about man-child stuff. You've probably heard a lot of it, by this point, but generally that's the immature man. We've been dumbed down, as men. And, you don't see a lot of the brave hearts running around anymore. You don't see these brave hearts running around anymore. I miss the brave heart types, actually. It could be a pain in the ass, but, they got the chi and the mojo and the ability to say, this is wrong. And I'm willing to die for it. We don't have many people walking around like, so one of my next blogs are going to be, what are you devoted to? You can look at my life and you know very clearly what I'm devoted to. Anybody who knows me knows what I'm devoted to. And that's my question, everybody. What are you devoted to? Because that's one of the pathways to enlightenment in yoga, the pathway of devotion. Okay, I'll tell one more story, then I'll stop. Anybody heard of Ananda Moyama, famous Indian saint? Beautiful lady. you know, in India, she was in the higher caste and, you know, Brahmin. She was set up with her beautiful husband, Brahmin, their beautiful couple. And this is from Yogananda's perspective. She does that. There is a, I don't know if it's an autobiography or a biography, but there's another book about her I got a little bit of. And as the story goes, I'm embellishing a little bit, I believe, but so her and her husband are set up to get married and they hadn't even kissed. You know how it is, they're in arranged marriage. And so he's, and she's a high level saint at this point. She's already been meditating a long time. So he goes up to kiss her after their wedding and he gets an electric shock and flies backward 6 feet. And he's like, who are you? You know, like, what the fuck just happened? And so he goes in again, you know, like, okay, you know, she's beautiful. Honeymoon, I want to have sex with this beautiful goddess, you know. He goes in for another one, tries to hug her and gets thrown back again. And then for a third try, thrown back again. And he says, I can see what you are. And I'm going to devote the rest of my life to you and I will never defile you again. And so he married her, but he never touched her again. That's, but that's devotion, you know. He took her as she was, which was freakishly weird, but, you know, couldn't touch her, you know.
Isn't that the ideal state to be taken as you are?
But it is funny, you almost expect it to be as soon as he was devoted to her, then he could go in, but no.
As the story goes, they never coupled. As the story goes, they never coupled. But he was always by her side. He was around. He was devoted. He was a beautiful man too. He could have gotten a lot of women, you know. And, you know, he was a beautiful Brahmin man. It's, fuck. But the point is, he devoted himself to this woman and bringing enlightenment to India and the world.
And neither of them ever got to have sex. That's so sad.
I tell him,
When you're having sex with the universe all the time, you don't need to settle for one man.
that's true. It's well put.
That's actually what.
That's
we're
very
taught.
well put.
That's what we're, explains that. When you really plug in spiritually, it's unlike anything else.
All the sages, I've read at least 1,000 stories of enlightenment. They're all the same. One kiss from God is like 10 million kisses from a human. It's not even, and I can speak to it. I mean, I yearn for human affection too, but I mean, that high state of samadhi, you don't create anything. Yeah. And being on the other side, you know, what people call the near-death experiences, that's related to samadhi, and there's no need there. But it's boring. That's why we come in here, because it's drama. Back there, the theater is kind of like, oh, this is boring. I want to go on some real drama. You know? There's no drama over there, you know. Like, it's all blissful and everything, and all the time. Like, yeah, I need some La Brea tar pits of delusion. You know, add some variety in here. You know?
Apparently, we all chose it.
We all here we are. We chose delusion on some level.
I don't remember fine print about the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
But it kind of makes sense now.
Yeah.
Well, it's our own delusion. We created it.
That's right. That's right. Any questions about cleansing, especially? And I'm gonna close this off.
I want to mention that Life Extension is having this 25% off sale.
The labs,
On the
right.
network, and that's the company. Links to the order.
There's Life Extension and BLT labs are the two that I use. BLT has some specialty labs that Life Extension can't get for the same price. So I spent some time vetting out the cheapest companies. And I mean, you can get a full blood panel, a comprehensive wellness panel with as much as you might need for the 25% off. It was 35. So what's 25% off?
26 or something.
It's like 26, 27 bucks. And they'll bill your insurance for $500 for that, and your copay will be 50. So you're better off just getting it out of pocket.
You can also buy it now because it's good for 6 months. You can buy like 3 tests now.
Oh, that's a great idea.
6 months.
Buy a bunch of tests now and then get your,
Even if it expires, I'll send you a new one.
you can get a requisition form later and book your labs later. So I have a lab menu in my Google Drive. It's a one-click access as long as you're using a computer. The cell phones may or may not get in. And so what I do is I'll write up a script. And right now, I mean, we all have the link. A lot of us have the link to the comprehensive wellness panel. You just go to Life Extension, go to the labs, or you can ask any of us and you get a hold of me and I'll email you the link. It's the best gold standard objective because you can do a lab before and after a cleanse or before and after a process and say, wow, look at this. And Because there's books about functional lab work that show things that the doctors are just, lab work is like a gold mine of information. And they, oh, you're within all the reference ranges, goodbye. Oh, your cholesterol is high, let's give you the statin. It's like one symptom, one formula remedy kind of stuff. And they're not using what one of my teachers said earlier, which was the other problem with Western medicine is a lack of imagination. The problem with Western medicine is a lack of imagination.
Well, if you have an imagination, they tell you to pick a different career, because that's not
Yeah.
science.
Right, but then we can counter with healing is an art and a science.
Yeah.
And anybody who's a healer knows that. That's why doctors aren't healers anymore. They're drug dealers.
They're not dealers, they're pushers.
Drug pushers. Very good.
Right, so BLT Labs is doing like thyroid panels and stuff for extension?
Their complete thyroid panel is only $95. The life extension one I think is a couple hundred.
Yeah.
So I chose their thyroid panel over the life extension one because it's cheaper. And I'm trying to get people the best deal. I mean, that's my MO. We want to give you the results you want in the least amount of time, the least amount of effort, and the least amount of money. That's what a doctor should offer.
Yeah.
I'm here to fire myself as fast as possible, basically. That's a good doctor. That's a good spiritual teacher. That's what Adyashanti says. I'm here to fire myself because spirituality at its worst is a disease. That's his quote. Spirituality at its worst is a disease, and I couldn't agree more. I was in the diseased seeker for a long time. Oh, I'm seeking something other than this moment. That's the disease. Because what you're seeking is always and already here. So if it's always and already here, how do we unenlighten ourselves away from here? You see? It's so simple. We want the complex, but we've forgotten the simple. What you're seeking is always and already here.
Really well said.
He said it. I'm giving him full credit.
You said it well.
He was quoted in all these Buddhist magazines as being the fresh new guy, back in the early 2000s. He was the fresh new guy, being able to put things into words that couldn't be put into words. And now he's got another generation behind him of even more eloquent speakers, right? Being able to put these subtle processes into words that have been taken from us through the English language. Because we have this fucked up language. We don't even have the forms of love described properly in English. Not even close.
What do we have?
Love. We don't have eros and passion and friendship love and the love of nature, and we don't have words. I mean, we can find the words, but we've been denied those words, right? You got to effort. Just like this Harvey Wiley thing, you got to dig to find this information of the vitamin stuff 100 years ago. If you don't dig, you don't see it. And so, any other questions?
What is this stuff you had in the dessert?
That's kombu.
It's kombu,
I left it for you personally.
and you can eat it.
Oh yeah, that's the yin tonic, seaweed.
That's what you mix miso soup out of.
Yeah,
Oh,
kombu.
really?
Or
The
wakame.
seaweed. I didn't know the kombu was that. Okay, thank you.
I cooked it in with why would I add kombu to white rice? It's an elemental mineral thing.
I think it said that it pulls out something bad from the rice, but then you can still eat it.
It can, but there's on this context, is it,
Iodine.
pardon?
It adds iodine.
An iodine's what? It's a mineral. So what's white rice got? Does white rice have any minerals? White rice is pure acid starch. White rice is pure carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. That's all white rice is. That's all white sugar
What
is.
is it? I'm sorry.
Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. A carbohydrate is just C8H12O8.
Where's the dessert?
Oh, where'd the pudding all go away?
Up there?
Yay. So you need to add the minerals in through the seaweed and the iodine to offset the acid because the minerals are alkalizing. So the piece of seaweed makes the white rice not so damaging on the body, not so acidic. Brown rice would be a better choice. It's like the whole potato is a better choice than a peeled potato. Oh God, do I not tell a potato story? Bernard Jensen, quickly. This got me into the peelings of potatoes more than ever because my mom would peel all of them off. And so this guy had horrible skin problems. And Jensen went to visit him, he's a nutritionist, and looking at these ducks. And he's like, God, your ducks look so beautiful. What do you feed them? He's like, oh, the potato peelings from my mashed potatoes. And oh, and you don't eat them. Okay. And so he's like looking around, what do you eat? And so mashed potatoes, how often? Oh, almost every day, lots of butter and cream, Okay, so I want you to experiment. So he said, I want you to boil the peelings and give the insides to the ducks. Give yourself the peelings boiled and see what happens. And so the guy's problems went away.
Mhm.
Yeah, the poor ducks, right? So the guy's problems went away because what Jensen saw is if you put a cross section of a potato, cut it, then you'll see this ring around, just around the edge by the peel. He calls it the potassium ring. The nightshades in general have a lot of potassium relative to sodium. And so that's where all your potassium is. And everybody knows that sugarcane, when it's served raw in Hawaii, is loaded with potassium. So potassium helps you metabolize sugar or glucose because potassium is alkaline, sugar is acid. They're a perfect couple. Perfect codependent couple. Codependent couple, acid and sugar. Well, there's one, I'm going to be teaching a chemistry module coming up, and David Stewart talks about chemistry as process. And that's how I got into this. And that, like H2O, well, they're codependent molecules, hydrogen and oxygen. They're codependents. And so he talks about these elements having personalities. And Google has a little app you can get, and it has each of the elements on the periodic table. They have about 20 of them that have a little cartoon character that does the personality of the elements. So even Google's done some stuff with this. One of the few nice things they've put together outside of the Google Drive, I guess is pretty cool. Any other questions? Other questions? Oh, we're on film, so I'm gonna go off this one. Okay, bye folks. It's a quick ending. It won't end, but it won't end. It won't go off. Why won't you stop? I swear this touchpad, when I get my chi going, it just doesn't. Anybody else want to try turn this thing off?
But the glow so
Low
high.
energy.
Yeah, maybe a lower energy state right there.
This one, okay.
Let's pause. Not weird.